Welcome, everybody. Hi, I'm Reggie Holmes, founder and creative director of Enthuse Creative, and I'm joined today by Mollie Katz of Mollie Katz Communications. She's a communication strategist based here in the DC metro area, just like I am, and we're really excited to be able to share with our audience today on the topic of brand communication keys, specifically five brand communication keys that Mollie will present that will help you as a business be able to show up with your brand, your message for the right people at the right time in the right way. So, sort of the genesis of where this conversation began was last month when Mollie and I did a workshop on brand communication, and the title was Telephones versus Megaphones. And the whole idea is that you communicate in a way that's more or less talking with your customer, talking with your client, as opposed to talking at them. So figuring out ways to be able to position your brand and your message that so that it lands a little bit better than feeling like you're either talking down to the person that you're talking to, or just giving them the message in a way that they're not going to be able to receive. So in that spirit, along those lines, we had a great conversation and dialogue about what brand communication looks like, what makes it successful, as also things that make it less successful. And one of the ways that Mollie added value to that conversation was developing these five brand communication keys. So I want to give her an opportunity on this platform to talk about those things more specifically, kind of break them down for us, because I really felt like they were valuable to the business audience. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mollie so you can break down those brand communication keys for us.
Thanks, Reggie. Yes, I'm excited about being with this audience today and being able to share some of what I've learned in my years as a communications consultant. I've worked a lot with nonprofits and in the area particularly of health and health policy and also in social justice. So happy to share that stuff today. I want to start by saying that one of the things that I think is really important is to kind of have a preparatory phase when you think about your brand. One of the guiding principles that I've used over the years comes from Stephen Covey in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he says, you should seek to understand first, then to be understood. And so my first couple of tips for brand awareness, for brand marketing, are to observe is number one. You want to have your eyes and ears open all the time. You want to be looking around to see what the organizations that are in your target audience and the individuals in your target audience are saying and doing. So you can be looking at their websites, really reading the content and seeing what kind of visuals they're putting out there. What does it suggest to you? What are they messaging out? Look at their social media feeds. What are they talking about? How often are they involved? Are they using top techniques? Also, look at what's in the news about the organizations in your target audience. Are they getting good press? Are they being innovative? And as you do this, you want to start to form questions and draw conclusions about what you're seeing. What are the interests of this group? What kind of needs do they have? Because when you know their needs, you'll be able to start to figure out how you can fill them. And what kind of victories have they had? These are important to know as well, because you may have opportunities to build with them on that. So also, as you seek to understand, I would say, ask a lot of questions, not just about what you have seen in online and so forth, as I just discussed, but also when you have the opportunity to talk to people who are in the industries that you're targeting, or in the companies that you're targeting, or the nonprofits. What kind of things can you learn by talking with them over coffee or at a networking event or a conference about things like, what are they working on now? What kind of challenges are they facing? What's hard? What's easy? What are they excited about doing now? See where their energies are going, and that may be a clue to where future opportunities may lie. What kind of things are they trying to figure out? because all businesses are always looking for new solutions and new ways to grow and expand. And I find a very valuable question you can ask to open up a broad discussion and really discover things is to ask, how is your field changing? All of us must adapt, and change is one of the only constants. I'm constantly telling myself that, and so do others in the nonprofit and business world. So understanding those perceptions and what those needs are is important. So when you've done your observing, you've done your questioning, and you've drawn some conclusions, you can start to think about communicating out. And so my third tip is to speak and write anecdotally. When Reggie was talking about telephones versus megaphones, I think this one is a really important piece about that conversational style as opposed to just announcing information or, the telephone versus megaphone for me is also sort of like two-way conversation versus bellowing out everything about your situation. And I think the biggest problem that I have seen in many years in communications, the biggest error that I see by organizations is they're too self-serving in their communications. They're really all about themselves when they really need to be projecting themselves out and showing that they are there for others, to solve problems, to do advocacy, to provide products and services. So when we talk about speaking and writing anecdotally, it is a lot more inviting to your audience to be listening to you. And it allows you to tell little stories about what you've learned or what you've achieved. I know a lot of times people feel very shy about talking about some of their successes. There's concern that they're going to cross a line and come across as boastful. But what I have discovered in practice is that when you tell a little story about, oh, I was facing that challenge too, and this is what I did to get through it, it allows you to, in a very modest and diplomatic way, show that you are dynamic, that you understand, where they're coming from, and that you've also had that experience of having to try to figure it out, do some trial and error, and see where it takes you. I also find that when you are willing to share that way with anecdotes and even a little bit of the trial and error, you build a better bond with people. I think it has more of an authenticity. Rather than just coming out and wanting to say, well, we're successful at this and we're successful at that. It's no, we're in the trenches like you are, and we're always trying to figure things out. I think that reflects that you will want to do that for others who may want to use your services.
Right.
And I think that those conversations are also more memorable and fun. They can have more humor. They can have maybe a little sarcasm or a little more color. And I think those are things that also you want, as you brand yourself, you want to be interesting, you want to be colorful, you want to be memorable so that people will think of you when they need you. I think that one of the examples that I've used in the speaking and writing anecdotally, I've worked on some issues having to do with chronic health problems and, some really serious illnesses. I was working in patient advocacy. And one of the things that's hard is that, chronic illness is always there. It's not always easy to figure out how to bring it into the conversation so that it gets communicated and gets heard. So one of the things that we did at holiday time, we decided to ask our community through our online chatting capabilities, what are you going to do to get ready for the holidays? How are you going to manage this, given that you have a serious illness and you may not have full energy? And we got some great responses. And one of them we ended up using to turn around and get a news feature written, a holiday story in a local paper. It was a woman from Louisiana who said, I love to decorate for the holidays. And I have all these wonderful decorations, but I can't just put them all out, at once. So I have this, system where I periodically, add a little bit more and a little bit more. And she told her story, and it was a way to get at the nature of this illness and what it can do in your real life, while also hooking on to the fact that everybody was interested in the holidays. And we got a chance to show off her great collection of holiday decorations. So it was a very well-rounded way to bring forward and communicate on an issue that was tough. And I think these kinds of hooks and these kinds of anecdotal stories are very rich in that way.
Excellent.
I also think that following up on your communications is extremely important. You
Hmm.
always want to have a stream, a flow of more information coming out, and that can take a lot of different forms. You want to be a helpful contact. You want to be sharing curated information. What articles have you come across that might be helpful to others? What books have you read? Are you a member of networking groups, for
Hmm.
example, that you could recommend to others? All of these things make you a very helpful contact and that support your brand as being plugged in, knowledgeable, um, collaborative, which I think is very important as well when you want people to select your brand. You can introduce people to other contacts who may be useful when you show that you understand what they're engaged in, and all of these things, make you a great contact and a strong professional. Another thing you can do in follow up is alert people when your organization may be doing something. Maybe you're doing a community service day, and your clients and partners are invited, or maybe you're doing a webinar and it's offering something that they may benefit from. All of these opportunities show that you are open and you are willing and you are generating ideas, and that gives you a dynamism to your brand. One of the examples that I've participated in that I thought was really helpful is um, Buffer, which does social media technology, scheduling, and so forth. In the past, I've participated in Twitter chats that they've done, and they're bringing together a lot of people who are in the same field, who are doing the same kind of work, at a given time, and they're putting out questions. And as the answers come in, you're getting a rapid fire access to a lot of other people's ideas and a lot of other inspirations and problem solving. And I found that to be beneficial for me. And, for Buffer, it was really just, bringing them back into my world again and again.
Right.
And my final tip of the 5 is that I think people should allow time for follow up too, for analytical thinking about all of that, what they have gathered, by doing their research and listening, by looking at social media and the news, and seeing what kind of responses you get to the anecdotal work that you're doing. Reflect back on what was popular, what wasn't popular,
Hmm.
use better timing. Did you have a better hook? Analyze all of these things and see what you can learn from your own experiences. Everything is trial and error, and really that's where you can shine, is
Hmm.
learning about your audience and how can you use that to best advantage in the future, to build better relationships with them and to bring in more of their attention. um, I think it's really valuable to spend some dedicated time
Hmm.
that, to put it in your schedule, and maybe you can do that on your own, or you can do that with your team, a little bit of brainstorming on what have we learned. But I also think it's really valuable too to allow yourself just some time to let things percolate, and to let ideas come to you when you aren't really expecting them. You might be exercising, you might be cooking, it's like the proverbial ideas that come to you in the shower. But allow
Hmm.
yourself some time when your mind isn't really grinding hard on a specific thing. And I have found that there's something about our brains that allows us to knit ideas together, and that sometimes the best ideas come, when they're kind of unbidden like that. So allow yourself some time to, cool your brain down and see what happens. Sometimes it can be very magical.
Yeah. No, those are all great points. So we've got observe, ask questions, speak and write anecdotally, follow up, and then allow yourself time to think. And what I think is really, really cool about the communication keys that you put forward is that they almost form like a circle. It's almost a loop. You start with observing, and then you go through the steps, and then you're at the point where you're giving yourself time to think and reflect on what you've seen, what you've shared out, the feedback to that, the follow up from that. and you're sort of reset yourself back at a place where you can again observe some new things and think about how you want to communicate about those as well. And I really like that. I never really noticed that before. It's really creating a healthy rhythm for your communication. You know, whether you are an individual expert, an organization, or a business. So I really appreciate how it kind of brings people around through this process. Sort of resets you back at a place where you can start at the top again. So that's really cool.
Exactly. And you want your communication, brand communication to be ongoing all the time,
Right.
that there are constantly new reasons to do it. So if you follow the cycle, it should be leading you to new directions and new ideas.
Right. Yeah. And one thing that I know is a struggle for a lot of businesses and organizations is this uh, pressure to constantly come up with content. And I think that this process is helpful because it built into it is opportunities to watch things as they happen, to
Mhm.
learn, to sort of note things as they're taking place in real time, and
Mhm.
then collect those thoughts, curate concepts and ideas from different places. So, is there anything that you would say to people who feel like their number one challenge in being able to communicate their brand well is just this pull almost to? I feel like they have to constantly be creating content. What would you say
Mhm.
to those people that have that struggle?
Well, I think it's true that you do need to constantly create content because
Mhm.
if you go silent or if you allow too long of a pause, you're going to start to fall off the radar.
Mhm.
We are all aware of how bombarded we are and how much is coming at us and how often. And so if you're not being regular about it and you're not being ongoing with it, you're going to lose some value.
Mhm.
But what I would say is try to look at it um, turn it upside down that if it seems like a burden, gosh, where am I going to get all these ideas, do I really have the time to be constantly pushing out these messages? um, See if you can look at it as more of a creative challenge,
Mhm.
and that number one, look around and look for examples. There are examples everywhere of how it's being done. The other thing I would say is um, a lot of the messaging that I see often is it's become more playful. I think that business
Mhm.
has become more playful and more, a little more informal,
Mhm.
and that this opens a lot of opportunities. Not everything has to be a deadly serious, issue. I'm
Right.
thinking about, for example, I use Canva, the online graphics app, and they send out every week the Canva Design Challenge.
Mhm.
And every week they offer their audience to, just use their system, obviously, to do something creative. So, like one week it was design a wrapper for a chocolate bar. One
Mhm.
week it was, designs a poster about sports. And it's it can be you can be whimsical. You can have humor.
Yeah.
You can have touch a lot of different um, kind of flavors and tones, and think about this as being more wide open.
Yeah.
And I think that it may seem a little bit less intimidating. There's always all kinds of hooks you can use, like seasonal hooks. Like I mentioned, I did that holiday story,
Mhm.
or maybe a change of season, you do something that's seasonal. But there's so much more that you can do, and I think there's just so much more that can be involved in our brand communications these days than we used to see. I think things were more formal.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think this sort of hits on the idea of brand voice and brand personality as well. Each of us as individual people, we have a voice, we have a personality, we have sort of the way that we consistently show up in different settings. And I always encourage business owners to think about their brand in the same way as if it were a person. Where would it go? What sort
Yeah.
of conversations would it have? What type of people would it seek out? For relationships and friendships. So I think when you think of it that way, it gets us away from this idea of businesses and brands being very monolithic and cold and serious all the time. And we realize that while we're people that may have serious jobs and get the work done, we also don't do that all the time. We have fully kind of rounded personalities, and we are the way we are when we're in the most comfortable settings. It's not always the way we are when we're in work mode or professional mode. And so I think business has evolved a little bit to create more space for brands to show up, not always so formally, not always in strictly professional terms, but there is a little more room for that play and for that informality. So I
Mhm.
agree with you on that, and that puts the impetus on businesses to really develop that brand voice and develop their brand personality. So you don't have to default to being super serious and lacking color and lacking um, personality, but you can bring some of that to any sort of setting or medium that you show up in. Um, so with that, we're gonna wrap up. But Molly, thank you so much for being with us and our audience today. And is there any one last final thing that you want to share that is like your number one takeaway for people as they start to think about their brand communication here in Q3 of 2023?
I'd say never give up, keep trying new things, and keep your eyes and ears open because there's so many ideas all around you.
Excellent. And to that, I would simply say, uh, at the end of the day, bring it back to your customer. You exist to meet their needs, so always be thinking about how to engage them in the process of communication. Again, it's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. It's a telephone dialogue, not a megaphone declaration. So I think that will help you be able to uh, keep your customer in mind and then speak and engage with them in a way that's going to make them feel seen and heard and part of the process. And when people feel involved, when they feel seen and heard, that helps to build trust, and trust is like the most important thing in building your brand. So thank you to everyone that tuned in. Please catch this on YouTube or LinkedIn. Have a great Friday, and we'll see you soon. Happy branding.